What's going on, everyone? I hope you all are enjoying your weekend and taking this time to prepare for the upcoming week in the market. And in this video, we'll be going over 22 setups I see potential in for this upcoming week. First, we'll be going over SPY and QQQ just to show you my technical analysis on these two and give you my overall thoughts. After that, we'll be going over some notable earnings, and then we'll be going over some setups I am watching for this upcoming week. And I would like to see how these play out. All right, so first, as I mentioned, we'll be going over SPY. As you can see, we did gap down on Friday and we did give up this 50 SMA on the daily time frame. Every time that we have tested or closed below this 50 SMA on the daily time frame, we have seen nice bounces the next day. So I would like to see if we can actually get a nice bounce on Monday and possibly fill this gap to the upside and get above that 418 level. We are currently around a lot of levels of interest. As I mentioned, that 50 SMA. Then we do have this POC around 415 or so, which implies that the most amount of volume is being held there on the daily time frame. And we also have this uptrending support line, which we have seen a couple nice bounces off of so far. So with that being said, I would like to see if we can actually get a nice bounce and possibly push to around 422.5 this upcoming week. And then we do have an all-time high that we just printed this past week of 425.46 or so on the intraday time frames. So I would be watching those levels to the upside. However, if we do give up this POC as well as break this uptrending support line and continue to trade below this 50 SMA, I would be watching to see if we do test 410.55, where we do have a gap around there between 411.05 and 411.67. If we break that level, we could possibly flush around 405.61 or so. And if we continue downwards thereafter, we could see a gap fill between 467 to 403.38. And as I mentioned, after that 410 mark, we would have a lot of overhead supply, so that could possibly be flooding into the market, increasing the supply. And if demand stays the same or decreases, then we could see a nice flush. So I would be watching these levels to the downside, as we could possibly see some more volatility this upcoming week in the market. All right, and with QQQ, this one has held up actually a lot better. We have seen some nice strength as of recently. The overall technology sector has been performing much better than it has in the past couple months or so. This past month has been quite well for the technology sector, but the previous months before that were rather weak. So I would like to see if this trend does continue in terms of the strength that the overall technology sector is showcasing. We did close around this 342.50 area, which was a previous resistance. I would like to see if that could possibly act as support now, and if we can actually get a bounce and possibly break the intraday all-time highs of 346.38 and possibly push around 347.50, maybe even 350. But if we do actually give up this level, then I'd be watching to see if we flush around 338 or so, where we do have a nice strong level of support. If we continue down, then we do have the 20 SMA around 336.50, and then we do have the 50 SMA around 334.38, where we do also have a horizontal level of support. So I would be watching those levels to the downside this upcoming week. But overall, I just want to gauge the strength or weakness of the technology sector to see where we could possibly head this upcoming week. All right, and for the first earnings play that we'll go over, it's going to be Plug. They report earnings in Tuesday in pre-market. We do have a falling wedge set up here on the daily time frame. We did just close below this $30 point, which is a resistance on the daily time frame. This one has been performing very strong the past month or so. We are up around 60% in the past month and a half or so. I would like to see if we can actually get a nice catalyst with this upcoming earnings report and possibly break this falling wedge to the upside and possibly push to around 34.14. After that, if we break that level, we could see a nice push to around VWAP, which is around 39 or so. We do also have a gap to the upside between 39.97 to 41.95 that I would be watching for if we do actually get a nice strong push from this upcoming catalyst that we have with the earnings report. If we do give up these levels, then I would be watching to see if we give up the 50 SMA around 28.17 and then possibly flush to around 26.31, where we do have a horizontal level of interest as well as the POC where the most amount of volume is being held. And as I mentioned, we do have a lot of volume being held around these levels, so we could possibly see that the overall supply starts to dry up, and if we do get a nice earnings report, we could get a nice bounce and push to the upside. The next earnings play that we'll go over is going to be Info. They report earnings Wednesday in pre-market. I'm not quite sure as to what this stock does. I have not really looked into this stock much, and I have never traded this stock. But after checking the upcoming earnings reports for this upcoming week, Info did catch my eye as the price action has been quite strong, and we do have relatively good volume, around 2 million average on the daily time frame. So I would like to see how this one plays out. We could possibly come back down to test around 107. If that does happen, we do have a nice strong level of interest around there, and we do have the 20 SMA residing around there as well. If we do get a bounce off that level, then I'd be watching to see if we could get above 108.50, 109.60, and then we do have a level around 110.61 as well as all-time highs of 110.96. So I would watch to see if we could push those levels and maybe break to 115, maybe even 120 if we do get a nice strong catalyst from earnings. But if we do continue downwards and break this 107 level, I would be watching to see if we flush around 105.15. We also have that 50 SMA around 105.74 as well as this uptrending support line. So I would like to see if we do come back down to test those levels, how price acts around those levels. The next earnings report that we have is FedEx. They report earnings Thursday and after hours. This one is also seeing a falling wedge on the daily time frame. We do have this uptrending support line that is also coming into effect, as well as some nice volume shelves. I would like to see if we can actually see a nice bounce off this level and possibly get above 285.79. If that does happen, I would be watching to see if we could push 293. And then if this earnings catalyst could possibly propel us to maybe push around 305.71 or so. If we do get a strong breakout of this falling wedge, I would be cautious of 298.29 as we have the 50 SMA around there. And then the 20 SMA is residing around 302.82 or so. If we get above this level around 305.71, then I would be watching to see if we pushed around 315.13, and then we do have an all-time high of 319.90. But if we do break this uptrending support line, I'd be watching to see if we push to or flush to 375.65, where we have VWAP on the daily time frame. After that, if we give up that level, we do have some good overhead supply, so we could possibly drop to 265.58, and then we do have the POC around 253.30. So I would be watching those levels to the downside. Next, we have BlackBerry. They report earnings Thursday and after hours. This one is, kind of within that meme stock category. So I would like to see how this one plays out, especially seeing as we do have an upcoming earnings report on this one. If we do break out of this falling wedge to the upside, then I'd be watching to see if we could possibly push around 1569. I do believe this one is a heavily shorted name as well, and I believe that's kind of why the overall Wall Street bets community has started to, congregate around this one. So if we do see a break of this falling wedge as well as a good earnings catalyst, then we could possibly see a short squeeze to 1569. If we get above those levels, I'd be watching around 1802 and then 1959. And we do have a recent high of 2017 that I would be watching as well. But if we do reject this level, which is VWAP around 1344, I would be watching to see if we give up this 20 SMA, which we have held as a nice support recently, which is around 1267. If we do give up that level, then we do have a level of interest around 1217, as well as a gap between 1161 to around 1233 or so. So I would like to see if we do fill that gap, and we do have a slight volume gap between 1267 to 13 or 1167, I should say. So I would be liking to see if we can actually possibly get a flush to the downside if we do actually see some negative reactions from earnings reports. All right, the next earnings that we have is going to be Nike. They report earnings Thursday and after hours. This one, I really don't like the price action on this one. We have been kind of in a range since September 23rd of 2020. And realistically, I don't like the earnings or the price action, I should say, on this one. But earnings could possibly be a nice catalyst, which we could, maybe get nice plays off of. So with that being said, if we do break 125.26, then I would be watching to see if we flush to around 121.13 or so. After that, I would just be gauging price action. The next level that I have is going to be around 117, and I do have levels around 112.50 or so. But overall, I just want to see how this earnings report affects the stock in terms of the price action, and if we can actually get a good sense of direction. If we do see a nice bounce, then we could possibly come back up to retest 130. If we get above that level, I would like to see if we could push to 134, where we do have the POC as well as a horizontal level of interest, and then we do have the 20 and 50 SMA residing around 133. So I will be watching those levels to the upside. All right, and the first play that we're going to go over that I am watching for that is not going to be notable earnings is going to be PayPal. This one has been performing very well on the daily time frame as well as the weekly time frame. We did see a nice breakout of this pinch point right here, and if we go to the weekly time frame, we can kind of just get a better picture as to that. We did have a nice little breakout. We are up around 10% or so within the past 4 weeks. So it hasn't been as strong as some other stocks, but overall this one has been performing well in terms of the sector, or I should say the industry that it is in. That kind of financial payments or the payments sector hasn't been performing too well, but this one has been a leader, kind of like NVDA. The overall semiconductor industry has been performing relatively okay. However, NVIDIA is the obvious leader. Kind of the same thing happening with PayPal here. We don't really have much overhead supply, and the overall volume shelves are starting to dry up. So we could see that the recent strength that we have seen could possibly fall over into this upcoming week. And if that does happen, I would like to see if we could get above Friday's high of day, which is 286.38, and possibly push to around first I'd be gauging around 293, then we do have a level around 298.56 or so. We do have an all-time high of 309.14, so I would like to see if we could possibly push those levels within the upcoming weeks. But if we do reject these levels, then I would like to see if we do come back down to possibly retest this breakout point. I have read some statistics that say that breakouts are retested around 40% of the time, and then afterwards, they do possibly go on to continuate a play to the upside and see a continuation play, but I'm not quite sure how valid those findings and statistics are. In my own findings, I have found that number is relatively close to accurate. I have found a lot of breakouts actually do get retested, so I would like to see if that does happen, and if it does, if we do come back down to retest 275.66 and 278, I would like to see if we can actually get a nice reversal off of those levels and see a continuation to the upside and possibly push around 293 to 289 or 298.5 or so. All right, the next play that I'm watching for is going to be Wish. This one is kind of a short squeeze candidate, and it has seen some good price action as of recently. We did have a nice 2-day pop with a huge influx of volume as of lately. We did have a push of around 90% or so in 2 days. We are kind of pinching on the micro, so I would like to see how this one plays out. If we do break 12 and then the recent highs of 12.54, then we could possibly push to around 13.16, which is VWAP on the daily time frame. After that, I would be watching around 14.16 and then 15.24. If we do get above those levels, we could possibly push around 17.54. But if we do continue to reject and actually break down to the downside of this pinch point, I would be watching to see if we get a strong flush of 11. If that does happen, then I would be watching to see if we can actually flush around $10 or so. After that, I would be gauging price action around 9.43 or so, where we do have that 20 SMA on the daily time frame, as well as a weak level of interest around there as well. Next, we have Amazon. This one has been performing very well. The overall industry that Amazon is in is also performing decently well. We have Shopify that is in the same industry, and that one is almost pushing new all-time highs as well. I would like to see how this upcoming week acts for Amazon. We have seen a nice strong bounce off this uptrending support line as of lately, as well as getting above those 20 and 50 SMAs. I would like to see if we can actually get above 3,500 once more. If that does happen, I'd be looking to see if we can get above Friday's high of day of 35.07 and then possibly push to around 35.50, where we do have a resistance. And then we do have the intraday all-time highs of 35.54. And if we put the pre-market and all-time highs or pre-market and after hours all-time high into effect, we do have an all-time high around 36.67. So if we break 35.50, I would be watching first to see if we could push around 3600. After that, I would be gauging pretty much just the pre-market all-time high of 36.67 to look to see if we can actually get above that level. But if we do reject these levels, I would like to see if 34.50 could hold. If it does not, we could possibly flush down to around 3400, where we do have a level of interest as well. So as I mentioned, SHOP is also near new all-time highs. We did kind of reject around 1475 or so. We did actually see a very strong week this past week. So I would like to see if that strength does continue on this upcoming week, and if we can actually get above that 1475 level, the Friday high of day of 1485.49, and then push the intraday all-time highs of 1499.75. If we break 1500, I'd be watching to see if we push around 1525, maybe even 1550. As I mentioned, this overall industry has been performing well, at least as of the market movers within that industry. So I would like to see if that trend does continue on. However, if we do reject these levels, I would like to see if 1434 does hold up. If not, I would be watching to see if we come back down to around 1361 or so, and actually retest those levels as supports. Next, we will be going over space. This one has been very strong within the past month and a half or so. As you can see, if we measure this move, it's up around 166% or so within the past month or so. This one is now bull flagging, and I would like to see how this plays out. If we do break this bull flag to the upside, I would be watching to see if we push around 39. After that, we do have a gap to the upside between 39.70 and 41.66. So I would be watching to see if that one could actually get filled to the upside if we do break this bull flag to the upside. But if we do reject this level, I would like to see if we come back down to around 35.75. At that point in time, that bull flag would still be remaining true, so we could possibly see a breakout to the upside still. But if we continue down and test 33.78 and give up that level, and then test VWAP around 31.88, which that 20 SMA is residing around there as well, then that bull flag thesis would be invalidated. So I would like to see overall just how this one acts this upcoming week. I do believe that this one has a relatively high short float percentage. So if we do actually break out to the upside on here, we could see a nice short squeeze, especially if we get above that 39 area. After that, as I mentioned, I would be watching to see if we can actually get a gap fill. FUBO is actually setting up quite similarly to space. We do have a strong move to the upside within this past month or so as well. We are up around 112 to 113% or so within the past 4 weeks. I would like to see how this one plays out, as we are also in a bull flag on this one as well. So we are around this 30.13 resistance zone. If we do break this bull flag to the upside, I would be watching to see if we could possibly push VWAP, which is around 31.39. If we break that level, we could possibly push around 33.70. After that, I do have levels around 36.09 and 39.79, but between those levels, we do have a gap between 37.73 and 39.33. And as I mentioned with space, I do believe that one has a decently high short float percentage, and the same thing applies for FUBO. So if we do actually break out to the upside, we could possibly see a short squeeze, and as you can see, the volume shelves does start to dry up after those levels. So I would like to see overall how this one acts. If we do reject these levels, then we could possibly come back down to retest around 27.34. If that level does break, then I would be watching around 26 and 23.71. All right, and as I've mentioned to the group, I don't know if I've mentioned this in the past on any previous breakdowns within the Sunday videos, I don't necessarily like Tesla. In terms of, as of lately, the price action hasn't necessarily been the most ideal, and the overall sense of direction has kind of faded away, as we have been range trading for the most part between May 13th to now. I would like to see if we can actually get a strong break of 630 and possibly push around 649, which we do have the 50 SMA on the daily time frame. And then we do also have a level of interest around 654. If we break those levels, I'd be watching 670 or so. After a break of 630, I would actually potentially like to play the upside of this move if we do get a strong break and hold of that level, and if we do see a good influx of volume here. But overall, it does appear that NIO, XPEV, Li, and some other EVs, especially the Chinese EVs, have been performing much better than Tesla. So that's kind of why I don't necessarily like Tesla that much at this point in time. But if we do reject these levels, then I would be watching to see if we can actually get below this POC around 610. And then we do have a strong level around 600, which, as of recently has been holding very well. If we do get below that level, I'd be watching to see if we flush through 581. Then we do also have a level around 566 that I am watching for, because we do have a small gap between 566.21 to 571.07 or so. So I would be watching that level to the downside, especially if we do get another strong rejection of this level of 630. All right, so the next one that we'll go over is going to be Snap. The overall social media stocks have been performing well as of lately. Pins has started to showcase some good strength and actually start to break out and actually push some of that price action gap that we have, which I'll just showcase that real quick. Overall, we have had a huge gap after missing the monthly active users. We saw a strong gap down. After that, we have kind of seen a V-shaped bottom, and we are now currently pushing. So the overall social media sector, or the industry I should say, has actually started to look alive once more. I would like to see if we can actually get above 63.73 once more and possibly push to 65.40. After that, I'd be gauging price action around 65.86. If we can get above these rejection zones, then we could possibly push to 67.62. After that, I would be gauging price action around 70 to 70.50 or so. If we do reject these levels once more though and continue downwards, I'd be liking to see if we can actually get below this POC in 61.34 and possibly flush to around 50.90 or 59.40 or so. After that, we do have a level around 57 or so. But as I mentioned, the recent strength from this overall industry has been appealing to me, so I would like to see if we can actually get above this 64 to 65.40 level. All right, and another stock that is in a relatively strong industry right now is going to be Crowd. Crowd and Net, also known as Cloudflare, have been performing very well the past couple weeks or so. Cloudflare, or Net, has just pushed for new all-time highs, so I would like to see if Crowd could actually do the same. These are kind of the leader of that industry that they're in. I believe they're in kind of I don't know exactly what the word is for it, but it is software applications where they do protect your information and whatnot. It's pretty much software security. So I would like to see if we can actually get a all-time high break of 25 or 251.28. We are around 245 or so. So I will be watching for a Friday high of day break of almost 248, and then see if we can actually get a continuation after that. But overall, if we do reject, I would like to see if 242 holds or 236.84. And then if we continue down after that, I would be watching around 225. And then the overall volume shelf start to come into effect there. So we could possibly see a nice bounce, seen as the supply could possibly dry up then. Next, we have ROKU. This one is setting up very well. I actually really like this setup, especially if we could possibly break 376.50. If we do break that level, I'd be watching to see if we could push to around 389. If we break, then I would be watching to see if we could push to around 400. After that, I would be watching to see overall how strong price action is, especially seen as we would see a dry up of the overhead supply, and we could see a nice push after that, seen as we do have a lot of volume being held to the downside. But if we do reject these levels, I would be watching 361. The POC and VWAP are between 350 and 354 or so. Then we do have the 20 and 50 SMA around 343 or so. So we do have a lot of potential supports to the downside. So I would like to see if we do come back down, if we can actually get a reversal. And if we do continue upwards, we could possibly see a nice strong move to the upside. Next, we have UPST. Recently, we have broken out to the upside of this falling wedge. This one is a very volatile name at times, so I would like to see how this upcoming week acts. If we can get above the recent highs of 128.50 or so, we could possibly see a nice push to around 134. After that, I would be watching 144.50. and then overall 157, 164, and 171 or so. As I mentioned, this one is very volatile at times, so we could possibly see a nice push to the upside. But if we do break these levels that we have traded around recently, especially around this 114 level, we could see a flush. We do have this uptrending support line that has held very well. So if we do break that, we could possibly see a flush around 104 to 105. After that, I would be watching around 91 or so. But overall, this one is a very, very interesting play. We do have a decent setup here, so I would like to see if we could break that 129 level. After that, I would like to see if we could get a nice push. So as I mentioned in the snap breakdown with pens, we do have a lot of strength as of recently, and we kind of had a V-shaped bottom right here. So we did break down after that monthly active users number did kind of fail to meet expectations. After that, we have seen a nice strong push to the upside. We do have a nice strong uptrending support line, and we are looking to possibly fill this gap. We did have a gap between 69.67 up to 75.95, so a strong gap that we had there. Currently, we have a high of recently of 74.58. And as I mentioned, that gap is to 75.95. So I would first off be watching to see if we can actually push to 75.80, where we do have a horizontal level of interest. If we get above that level, we would fill that gap. And then after that, I'd be gauging to see if we could possibly push to 79 or so. But overall, if we continue to possibly reject this level, I'd be watching around 73. 71.25 is the level of VWAP. And then we do have the POC around 68.90. And after that, we would have this uptrending support line that would be coming into effect as well. As of recently, a lot of eyes have been on NVIDIA. This one has been a very, very strong name. We have seen an absolute rip to the upside. Let's just see here how strong of a move we have had. We've had a move of around 42 to 43% in the past month or so. And this one is a mega cap. So to see that level of strength from a mega cap is extremely I wouldn't say rare, but overall it's something that you definitely want to take note of, and you usually want to follow those names. But as of recently, we do have this inverted hammer, and we could possibly see a continuation to the downside if the overall price action that we saw on Friday does follow over into Monday in this upcoming week. I do believe that we have that shares split that is going to be on Monday. It appears that a lot of people have bought into that hype and bought into that news. That kind of could have an overall outcome similar to, let's say Dogecoin, for example, when everyone was hyping up the SNL skit with Elon Musk, expecting that the price would get pumped, and the result was actually a dump. So it appears that, it's kind of a buy the rumor, sell the news, but, with this one, it's not a rumor. It's kind of like buy the hype of the news. Once the overall news hits, we just sell. So I would like to see if that happens. If it does, I would be watching around 721, 713, 703, and 684. Those are going to be the levels that we have made recently, so they're not going to be too strong. But we do have that 20 SMA around 680 as well, so we could possibly see a nice support around that 684 level. But if we do break that, then I would be watching to see if we come back down to around 648, where we do have that initial previous all-time high, so I would like to see if we retest that breakout there. Next, we have AUTOdesk. This one is in a macro pinch point. We are kind of at the lower end of this pinch point, so I would like to see if we break down, especially if we break down below 273 and this uptrending support line, we could possibly flush around 262 or so. After that, I would be gauging price action around 253 or so, where we do have a nice level of support. If we continue downwards, then we do have a lot of overhead supply, so we could possibly see a nice strong flush to the downside. I would be gauging price action around 228 to 220 or so. But if we do bounce off these levels, I would like to see if we could get above the POC, which is around 280 and then 284, where we do have the 20 and 50 SMAs around those levels. After that, I would be watching around 290, 250, and after that point in time, we would have this downtrending resistance coming into effect. So I would like to see overall just how this pinch point plays out on AUTOdesk. All right, and lastly, we have Adobe. This one did report earnings this past week, and we did see somewhat of a micro bull flag breakout. If we want to go over here and put in this downtrending resistance as well as this downtrending support line, we did see a nice strong pop on Friday, but then we kind of flushed a little bit. We closed around 565, but would like to see if we fill this gap between 552.72 to 556.39, or if we can actually break the 570 all-time highs and possibly push to 575, maybe 580 this upcoming week. But overall, this one has been strong as of recently, especially seen as we just broke out of an extremely long base rate here. We have this base that has been established since June 19th of 2020. So we could possibly see a nice acceleration to the upside, seeing as we've based for so long. And the overall initial earnings report reaction was good, so I would like to see if that follows over into this upcoming week. With that being said, there are a lot of solid setups within the market right now, so do your own scouting and scout for the setups that you like to play. Create game plans around them and then execute with discipline. With that being said, I hope you have a great rest of the weekend and enjoy your week in the market.